So we're super excited today to work with Journey Home Healing and Dr. Sarah Sue Myers, who's out in the field in Bellingham, Washington. You may recognize Sarah Sue from our on-campus herbal plant walks on the farm last year, and we had planned more of these plant walks this year, but we wanted to be able to continue and share some of her expertise with you today. If you're interested in learning more, her website is journeyhomehealing.com, and I will share that in the chat box as well. I wanted to share that 21 Acres is located in Woodinville, Washington, in a valley that was originally home to the Sammamish peoples. Dr. Sarah Sue is in Bellingham, which was originally home to the Lumi peoples and more. We acknowledge the Coast Salish tribes as the original inhabitants and stewards of this land, and we're grateful to continue caretaking the property for future generations. Without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to Dr. Sarah Sue. So please, if you are interested in participating, as I said, ask questions, chat in the chat box, and we are excited to get started today.
Thank you, Rebecca, for that great introduction. I really appreciate the words you shared. And yes, so it's raining out. I have my trusty umbrella again. And today I'm actually out at my good friend Andy Walton's farm, just between the Bellingham and Ferndale area, which is kind of the conversion zone between the Nooksack tribe and the Lummi Nation. His farm is called Nourish Craft Farm, which I will give you a little view of. I'll probably go inside that greenhouse over there to get shelter while we are doing this walk today. And I just want to take a moment to honor this land, honor the peoples who originally inhabited this land. And I also just wanted to take a moment to honor Mother Earth. You know, last Sunday was Mother's Day, and I would say over the course of the last 10 years, my experience and my story with Mother's Day has really evolved, especially just the more I've learned and grown. And I want to first honor all mothers out there for all the amazing work you do. And I want to honor mothers of past, present, and future. Sometimes it can be a painful holiday for some. But also honoring the mothers that are potentially not natal mothers for us. I know I personally can relate to powerful, amazing women in my life who I see as mother figures who is not my natal mother. And I also want to invite you all to consider and think about exploring how you are as a mother to yourself. And I will bring that topic up again throughout the class today. You know, not only are we mothers externally to other people, but we also have a responsibility to be mothering to ourselves, whether we identify as male or female, because we all hold that feminine energy. And of course, for Mother's Day, honoring and celebrating the divine Great Mother Earth and all that she provides for us, all of the healing, including some of the medicines we'll be talking about today, but so much more. I am actually teaching a couple times this weekend. This is my first teaching, and tomorrow I am going to be teaching about the cardiovascular system for an anatomy teacher training for yoga teacher trainees. And I really have been diving into the review of the content, and then also just noticing the plants that kind of have been standing out to me, and was kind of chagrined of this great topic of cardiovascular medicine and cardiovascular health, but also heart medicine, which leads me to the introduction of our first plant. If I can do this. Okay, here we go. So I will take a step back first. What I'm primarily pointing at here is the tree with the white flowers. There's one back there as well. And for most of us in the Pacific Northwest, this tree is popping with flowers all over. It's pretty common. Take a step closer so we can get a look at the flowers close up, as well as the leaves. And one of the identifying characteristics, thorns. Does anyone know what this plant is? So, this plant is the hawthorn tree. The Latin name for hawthorn is crataegus. There's many different species. There's Crataegus labiegata, Crataegus douglasii, which is the native hawthorn of this area, which this is not. But hawthorn is a tree that is found in many different parts of the world. It's an ornamental, and it has really powerful medicine as well as really deep, expansive folklore with it. So it's a tree, but it's a unique tree because it belongs to the rose family. And one of the things that I like to relate it to with the rose family is these thorns that are located on it. Let's see if we can find some other thorns that I can identify here. And then, so carefully, so I don't lose this umbrella, I want to point out the leaves of the hawthorn tree. So actually, maybe I will take a couple samples and we will go to retreat to the greenhouse. Thank you, Hawthorn, to talk about this further. Already I'm seeing that there's a couple questions coming up. Oops, sorry guys. I would be open to answering those as I walk to the greenhouse here.
I see a question here from Natalie. Is this particular hawthorn plant not native to Washington?
Yeah, you know, my understanding is it's only the Crataegus douglasii that's native to this area, but these other species, you know, they've been brought in and cultivated for generations now. A lot of them are ornamental initially, but I mean, hawthorns are pretty commonly found in this area, but technically, no, it was transported over, I believe, from Europe. I do not know the exact location of that, but something you could probably easily find with a search of hawthorn and origin sites. And again, there's many different species of hawthorn, and yeah. Any other questions coming up right now?
Looks like that's it for now, unless anybody on the call has a question.
Okay. So these plants, they're flowering right now. And unlike the very fragrant, aromatic scents of some other amazing flowers that are showing up right now, such as lilacs. Lilacs are like the big one that I've been noticing lately. Hawthorn flower actually does not smell that good. It has a scent kind of reminiscent of baby's breath, which kind of almost has a hint of urine smell to it. At least that's kind of what I compare it to or relate it to. But yeah, it doesn't really hold a very ideal smell. And then the leaves that I wanted to point out is that they kind of have a similar shape as a maple leaf, a very extreme lobed maple leaf. And they're pretty small. Let's see another one here. Oh. So that's one of the identifying characteristics, is that maple leaf shape, the lobes of the leaves coming off a primary vein of the leaf. This is really tough to do on the phone today. And then the flowers, which typically have 5 petals on each flower. This one got crushed as I was walking over here with my hands full. I'll go over there and get another sample, but I want to just sit and chat about the hawthorn plant for a bit. So this plant was taught at school for me, but I think that when I really learned about it for the first time was from one of my teachers and mentors, Dr. Deborah Francis, who is a naturopathic doctor, a teacher. She's also an RN and an amazing medicine woman. She taught me about hawthorn as a great heart medicine, not only for the physical heart, but also the mental and emotional heart. And I've been thinking about that, how to explain that in a way that feels a little bit more accessible to all folks, especially those that are new and budding herbalists to this, you know, in the spirit of these talks. And so when I think about, we'll talk about a lot of the physical benefits of hawthorn, but I wanted to start on this topic. And just a side story with that, as I was preparing for the cardiovascular lesson that I have tomorrow, I was doing research the other day on heart rate variability, which is a term and a measurement that we can do that helps determine heart health. Heart rate variability is essentially the time between heartbeats. And so we're looking for the variability of the time between different heartbeats. And the more variation between beat to beat, so essentially that our body's responding moment to moment and adapting to its conditions, is a determinant of health. Whereas someone who has a more monotonous heartbeat, dun, 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 tends to have decreased vitality and a decreased outcome of health. And there's been a lot of research about this and studies about it, especially they do end up doing a lot of research on people with congestive heart failure or people that have just had myocardial infarctions, MIs, or also known as heart attack. And learning that recovery is significantly better when there's increased heart rate variability going on. Arguably, that I personally think that should be a common measurement in people's wellness panels just as much as a lipid panel to really discern the cardiovascular risk for some people. So as I was doing this research on heart rate variability, things that improve heart rate variability include meditation, yoga. It includes visualizations and different biofeedback type practices. A lot of biofeedback, some of its therapeutic goals are to help people build their heart rate variability and improve that. Other examples are just being out in nature, sitting in nature, practicing gratitude. One of the studies showed how they just took 2 different groups that had I believe it was congestive heart failure complications, that they were hospitalized. And the group 1 just got conventional treatment. The other group also got conventional treatment, but the variable that they added in was that they journal about gratitude daily. 5 minutes, significant improvement in health outcomes and recovery. And so back to the hawthorn, what I was taught and what I've experienced with the hawthorn plant is that there is an energetic aspect where the hawthorn can really have an impact on gentling our heart, dissipating a lot of barriers and armor that we can hold over our heart, whether that is fear, resentment, coping mechanisms that make us feel safe when we're scared, or traumatized or triggered that prevent us from being in our heart space and being open. And those conditions increase risk of decreased heart variability, but also increase in cardiovascular risk and events happening. And so Hawthorn even just energetically helps to open up that heart space. And that can include a flower essence of Hawthorn. That can include just taking drop doses of a Hawthorn tincture. It could also just be drinking some Hawthorn tea, you know, harvesting some Hawthorn from your local Hawthorn tree. Leaf and flower is great to harvest this time of year. You can use both of those for the medicine. And that can really help, I think, over time as a tonic, help to soften and open up the heart. One other thing that Deborah Francis taught was the importance of the thorns, how the thorns are there for protection and discernment, so that we're not just like carelessly opening our heart all the time, because that's not necessarily safe either. Brene Brown kind of talks about in the state of like, or the practice of vulnerability, right? Like vulnerability is this great outcome of like fulfillment and satisfied life, but we can't just like willy-nilly go around being vulnerable with everyone, because that's not safe. So we have our tribe, we have our group, we have our community of people that we know that it's safe to be vulnerable with. And so it's discerning. And then we use our thorns to decide who it's not okay to be vulnerable with, who it's not okay to open our heart to. So there's that discernment piece. So interestingly enough, with the heart opening, that's what Hawthorn does on the physical level. One aspect or characteristic therapeutic of Hawthorn is that it is opening to the heart tissues themselves. It's very good for strengthening and healing and supporting the coronary arteries of the heart. And those are the arteries that go around the heart muscle itself that provide nutrition and oxygen to the heart muscle and the heart tissue. And Hawthorn has been measured and demonstrated to have that affinity for the heart muscle and the coronary arteries. And again, that includes the leaf of the tree, the flower of the tree, as well as the berries that grow and come out. Those are usually ready to harvest by end of September, early October. And I'll probably end up talking about that one again when that time comes, because they're just so beautiful and great to learn about more. Other benefits of the hawthorn plant is that they're also very supportive and protective of all the other blood vessels in our body. So the vessels include arteries, veins, as well as the vessels that carry our lymphatic fluid throughout our body. And this plant will help strengthen the integrity of the inner lining of the vessels, which that inner lining is called the endothelial wall. It helps to smoothen and strengthen the connective tissue of it. And another aspect or characteristic of hawthorn is that it's a potent antioxidant. And so that's also really important for vessel protection. What happens at the level within the blood vessel with the formation of things like atherosclerosis is that there has to be inflammation present in order for that plaques to build and the atherosclerosis pathology to unfold. If there's no inflammation present, even if there's high cholesterol levels, arguably, the plaques will not form. You really need that oxidative stress and the inflammation for that pathway and that cascade to occur. And so having, an anti-inflammatory diet and, taking in plants that are rich in antioxidants helps combat those free radicals and inflammation that we experience in our body. There's many reasons that we can experience inflammation. Sometimes just, you could be eating a perfect diet and doing everything perfectly, but being in stress and feeling like stress is happening to you all the time can perpetuate inflammation just as much as having a standard American diet or eating a food that is actually probably a food that you would be better off not eating, like a food allergy or food sensitivity. Another great characteristic of hawthorn that I really like is that it also has this aspect of opening the heart, again with the blood vessels, in order to feed the heart muscle oxygen. So hawthorn is commonly used for all heart conditions. And I really think it comes down to improving circulation to the muscle, improving circulation to the whole cardiovascular system, and providing oxygen. Circulation is incredibly important. When our tissues don't get oxygen, damage occurs. That's essentially what's happening with a heart attack, is that the vessels are getting smaller and occluded due to plaque formation, atherosclerosis. And so there's not as much blood delivery to the vessels and the organs and the muscles that there needs to be. And being able to relax the smooth muscle around the vessels to open it up and help combat some of that plaque buildup helps deliver oxygen and life to our tissues, whether that's the cardiovascular system or any other body system. You know, that's something I definitely think about clinically, is like, if there's an issue, like one question I'm always asking myself, well, is there adequate circulation to that area in the first place? Because the blood will bring all that our bodies create and all that our bodies truly need in order for healing to occur, but it needs to get there first. Let's see here. What else do we have? Another really interesting thing about hawthorn is that it's been demonstrated and measured that it can help balance and modulate heart rate and rhythm. So it's really great at helping regulate any sort of abnormal rhythm, whether it's preventricular contractions or any type of arrhythmia. This medicine, again, is a tonic for the heart. Sharon Tilgner refers to hawthorn as the adaptogen of the heart, which an adaptogen is something that essentially, if something's too high or opting too much in the body, it helps slow it down. Or if something's like hypo and not working enough, it helps to lift it up and balance it and get it to this healthy level where it can work. And so with hawthorn, it's a great adaptogen because it kind of helps normalize and regulate and modulate things that are off balance in the body. It can also help to modulate blood pressure as well. Of course, you know, using plants for stuff like this, it's not going to be as strong and powerful or potent as pharmaceuticals that have these actions. And I would definitely recommend, if you were going to do any of this, consulting with someone like me who is trained not only in the pathology and physiology of the condition you're working with, but also the education of the herbs that you desire to work with, because there's a lot of the primary or preliminary information out there, but it's really unique, and everybody's has different constitutions and require guidance, you know, based on their uniqueness, as well as keeping one safe and making sure that they're getting the desired therapeutic that they're seeking out. Any questions coming up? Okay. We talked about one plant chemical called proanthocyanidins. When I was talking about nettles, because there was some purple coloration showing up on the plant. And I want to bring that word and that constituent back into the conversation. One of the plant compounds that is extremely high in hawthorn, especially the berries, because the berries have that deep red ruby color, are the proanthocyanidins, as well as oligomeric procyanidins, which are closely related. And I'm not a chemist, so I can't go any further than that, as well as flavonoids. And all of these chemical constituents contribute to the actions of the plants. And just a reminder of the proanthocyanidins, this is the pigment spectrum between red to purple and blue that is observed and seen in different plants, such as hawthorn berries, purple cabbage, beets. Pretty much all of the berries have that coloration. And what is special about the proanthocyanidins is just more of the benefits, and probably why there is that of the antioxidants in the hawthorn, as well as that strengthening of the blood vessel integrity, supporting and building strong connective tissue so that these vessels can not only be healthy and create a nice open pathway for adequate circulation and blood flow, but that they can withstand a little bit of stress from elevated blood pressure that people experience at times. You know, blood pressure can be really tough on blood vessels. It's essentially creating friction along the inner lining of our blood vessels. And over time, that starts to deteriorate and wear down those vessels. I mean, that's sort of the nature of water, right? Like, if you have water flow, things are going to start to break down and wear away. You know, you think about the formation of a body of water and the long breaking down and eroding of rocks into rough rocks, into smooth rocks, into sand. That's just the thing that water does if it's at a high pressure. And so having these rich, plant-rich foods that are, you know, purple, blue, pink, can help combat some of just the regular wear and tear of residing in our bodies. I saw a question come up, and I'm about to wrap up and go to the second plant. So if there's any other questions or curiosities about hawthorn, this is a great time to ask it.
We have a question from Brandy about just would you be able to talk about nettles if there is time? Brandy, we did a nettle talk a couple of weeks ago. I'm happy to share that, but maybe Sarah Sue, you could share a brief, some brief info about the nettles.
Okay, I'll check in on time frame after I talk about the next plant. Otherwise, if I don't get to it, I talked about nettles for probably like 40 minutes, 30 minutes or 40 minutes on the first video. Just go and watch that.
Okay. Thank you.
I wouldn't do nettles its appropriate service if I tried to like squeeze it in today.
Yes. But I understand.
Yeah. I also saw a question. Thank you for reminding me. How do we take this plant? I love hawthorn tea. This is a great time to harvest the leaf and flower from the plant. And again, be careful because there are big thorns on those trees and on those branches. So it's great. I mean, just like nettles, harvesting nettles and hawthorn, it takes mindfulness. It takes approaching the plant with respect. I like to have conversations with the plant. And honestly, I feel like if I walk away not getting poked or getting stung, it's just not quite fair. I feel like they need their say in the end of things. But you can, and then when you harvest it, you can just dry it and like put it in a mason jar and just, you know, use about a tablespoon of that per cup of water to make yourself a nice hawthorn tea. You know, because the leaf and flowers are so light and fluffy, you really don't need to like boil them. The best way to make a tea with something light like a flower or a leaf is to just take a pot of water with the appropriate amount of water that you want to make. I like making a couple doses of tea with one batch just because it saves time and energy. Bring that to a boil and then shut that stove off and put the herbs in, whether they're dried or fresh. Cover it up, because there are medicines that will try to dissipate and escape, like volatile oils, which are like, you know, they evaporate into the atmosphere. So if you cover it, you get to keep that medicine in. And let it steep. I like to let it steep for 20 to 30 minutes. There are instructions of earlier than that. Some are later. I mean, traditional Chinese medicine, they're like boiling this in a crock pot for like days sometimes, although they usually use a lot more roots and stuff. But that's a good way to prepare the leaf and flower tea. If you're using berries, I would do the berries separately and actually do a decoction, which is, you can translate decoction into a low, slow boil. And again, covered, so you don't lose those medicines. And then once you do like the thicker plants, or the more dense part of the plants, like the berries or the roots or the seeds, like fennel seed, you decoct that for like 30 minutes. And then again, shut off the heat, put in the light, fluffy, airy parts of the plant, cover it and let it decoct or infuse for another 20 or 30 minutes. Other ways that I really enjoy using Hawthorn is I like tincturing it. My favorite, I've been doing a Hawthorn tincture the last 3 years. I like using brandy rather than alcohol or Everclear. You don't need a high alcohol content to extract the medicinal constituents from Hawthorn. So I think brandy just tastes nicer, and then I'll usually add about like a 1-to-5 ratio of honey to brandy. The honey is really nice, and I just kind of did that as a whim, but it really makes it taste lovely. And I will do a combination of the leaf, flower, and the berry when I do a tincture. And if you want more info of how to make a tincture, specifics, feel free to reach out to me. I'm sure there's plenty of folks that made lovely videos of how to do it on YouTube or Google too. And Sharon Tilger's book, which I forgot to bring, I did a shout out to that book last time. She's got some great instructions on how to make medicines in her book, including a materia medica, which is a materia medica for herbal medicine. Basically lists all the herbs, the Latin names, the parts that are used, recommended dosages, as well as the actions and the information about the plant. I have about like 5 materia medicas that I will refer to when I'm researching plants. And Sharon Tilger's is one of them, as well as Dr. Deborah Francis's book. Did I show you guys? Okay, I did. Anyhow, there's also different pills and capsules out there that are available as Hawthorn medicine. Also, I want to let you guys know, just being fully transparent, I have no affiliation with any companies, any books, nothing like that. My agenda is not to sell stuff, but I do like to acknowledge where there's good quality, whether it's a person, a teacher, or a product. My favorite product that I use for Hawthorn is by Gaia, Gaia, like the name of Mother Earth. And they use liquid extract, which is really delicious. When I'm taking that, I actually just like crack that open in my mouth and like actually take the liquid extract out of the capsule. It tastes so good. That's one of my favorites for Hawthorn medicine if I'm not prescribing a tea or a tincture. Hawthorn is pretty much great to take in any form, and I recommend taking it daily because it is a tonic. And with tonic herbal medicines, those are ones that you kind of just need to take regular amounts of over a long period of time. It's, Hawthorn's very safe. I haven't mentioned any like contraindications or side effects because there's really low to few. Although again, just, a word of prudence, if you are starting any new medicine, start low, go slow. Get a sense of what your body's own personal response and reaction is to it. There are some people that can just like take herbal medicine by the, like the growler full. And then there's some that I know that like just drops may be too much. Like everybody's got their sensitivity and the way that they take in and metabolize the herbs. Gaia is also a B corporation, which I love finding out when products I like are B corporations. They do just the extra work of doing business for good and for the environment and people. And then there's the flower essence of Hawthorn, which is a very different process. It's not extracting the medicinal constituents per se, like the flavonoids and proanthocyanidins. but more of the energetic aspects of the hawthorn, which I was talking about at the beginning, where hawthorn's really great medicine at helping let go of the armor and the guard that can be around our hearts that are preventing us from fully showing up, not only for ourselves, right? Because when our heart's guarded, it can be guarded from everyone, not just certain people. And it's really hard to break that down. And I just know from my own personal experience, my observations, you know, in my work, in my community, that when we're in that triggered or guarded response, it's really hard to show up for ourselves. You know, going back to that theme of, you know, how do we mother our own selves? You know, just thinking about like our self-talk during those periods of time, like, are we being gentle with ourselves? Like, are we being harsh critics, or are we being supportive and practicing forgiveness? Are we giving ourselves permission that it's okay to like take a break from work and sit down and eat lunch, or give yourself permission to like go for a walk outside? Sometimes I think it can be really hard to do those kind of things. And so, you know, for all of you listening out there, I just want to invite you to maybe just take a few more moments than usual to notice how, you know, what that self-talk looks like for you. And, you know, noticing where you're being hard on yourself, and then thinking about like, is this how I would treat a baby? Is this how I would treat a child? Like, no. If it's not, then like, do you think you deserve it? I personally don't think any of us deserve that. Okay, back out to the field. Let me do a little switch here.
Sarah Sue, while you're walking out there, could you just repeat the names of the books that you talked about earlier?
Oh yeah, so that first one was, well, let me repeat those when I get back in. Can you remind me, Becca? I have the name of one of them in the greenhouse, and I just can't remember the name of it at the moment.
Yes, I will do that.
I'm too much multitasking for me at the moment. All right, we are here. Ta-da! Does anybody know what I'm looking at or pointing to? Look at these bad boys. They look so healthy. Anybody know what this is?
Are they chives or garlic?
Garlic.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Which could easily be, I saw leeks too, right? Because they're all from the same plant family, the allium family. But I wanted to take a moment, well, I wanted to take the rest of this class to honor the garlic. This is not necessarily found out in the wild, though there are the wild onions and wild alliums found in more of the mountainous terrain. But these are cultivated. You see the nice stalks where the leaves shoot off that are originally wrapped around the stalk itself. You know, I'm kind of curious to see if they have the garlic smell. I'm so looking forward to doing these walks in person again, because I really enjoy using the kinesthetics aside from just sight and sound. They actually don't smell super garlicky yet. All right. And I am not going to take a sample with, because they are totally content there and do not need to be disrupted. So back to the books. So the one that I don't have a copy of is by Sharon Tilgner. I mentioned it last time. It's like the heart, what was it? Is there any way one of you guys could maybe Google the name of that?
Yes, I am looking them up right now.
Oh, great, great. And then I'll show you the cover of the other one.
Herbal medicine for the heart of earth.
Yes, for the heart of the earth. Perfect title for our theme today, guys. Okay, and then here is this one. Practical Wisdom and Natural Healing. Sage Advice for the Modern World by Deborah Francis, RN, ND. There's a lovely picture of her there. She's so great. Okay. So, garlic. Garlic is, the Latin name for garlic is Allium sativa. And again, from the allium family, which includes onions and leeks and garlic and shallots. And garlic is sort of a powerhouse when it comes to cardiovascular herbal medicine. It does so much. And the part that is used are the garlic cloves, the same that you can find and buy in the store. And those cloves, but first and foremost, they're pretty nutrient rich. They contain sulfur-containing compounds, which can be incredibly beneficial for different parts of our body, including feeding our glutathione pathways in our body. Our glutathione requires a sulfur-containing compound that can be received from plants from the allium family, as well as other sulfur-containing amino acids. And glutathione is the most potent antioxidant in our body, and our bodies make it. Isn't that cool? And garlic also has quercetin, which we talked about quercetin, talking about the nettles. All the more reason to go back and watch the nettles. But I wanted to just take a moment to talk about that. Quercetin is found in a lot of different foods, but its amount is highest in onions, and not far away from that is garlic. And quercetin has anti-inflammatory properties as well, and a potent antioxidant, as well as a vessel protector. So it's interesting. It has a lot of similar qualities and characteristics that the Hawthorn has, in a much different presentation. Because how do we take garlic? We eat it. We incorporate it into our foods, our soups, our dressings, our condiments, sometimes our medicines, our ferments. I just did a radish lacto fermentation preparation last night, and essentially did radishes that came from this farm and a bunch of garlic and mustard seed. So, and quercetin, one of the things that I think about initially, right away when I think about quercetin, is that it helps stabilize these immune cells in the body called mast cells. And the reason that mast cells are an issue is because they're the ones that produce and release histamine. Histamine is released in times of things like allergies, asthma, hives. That histamine creates that red, itchy, inflammatory response. And so having foods and herbs that are high in quercetin help lower histamine release in the body. So of course, this is going to be a great supportive plant to help reduce the symptoms of things like allergies and hay fever and even asthma. I was doing some research on quercetin this morning, looking at some peer-reviewed research, and I found it really interesting to hear that they have measured higher concentration in quercetin in plants that are exposed to higher amounts of UV radiation. You know, which brings me back to like when I first started learning about plants, like they have their primary compounds and secondary compounds. And commonly when we're talking about herbal medicine and the actions of these herbs, it's usually provided by these secondary compounds that the plants make as a way to defend themselves. You know, plants can't just like get up and run away from something. So they've just developed such amazing skills and techniques and abilities to protect themselves. And that includes like the things that are good for us are really in origin made by the plants because they're also good for them and protect them. And so thinking about, you know, high UV radiation causes free radical damage and inflammation and can lead to things like mutation and cancer, at least if it's in a human body or an animal body, arguably. And so I just think it's like so great and such a great example that with plants that experience higher UV radiation, you know, the stressor, that the plant responds by making more quercetin. And I've also noticed this with, you know, herbal medicines that are found in the wild crafted in the wild versus ones that are cultivated and very well cared for, happy gardens. The medicine usually isn't as strong. The best example I could think about for that is yarrow. Yarrow flower. That is one I always seem to notice when I'm out and about on the trails, in the mountains, in the desert, on the east side of the Cascades. And that yarrow is beautifully bitter, like so bitter. Even just a tiny bit of the leaf in the mouth, it's like, whoo, like it just really like stimulates and wakes you up. And I remember when I was going to school at Bastyr University, my work study job was working in the garden. There was yarrow growing in those gardens, and those gardens were just tended and cared for with so much love, not only from the, you know, folks like me who were work study, but the staff that was there was so amazing. And I just want to like take a moment to acknowledge Jenny Perez and Michelle Milligan. They were such great teachers for me and for all of us, the staff of the Bastyr University Garden. But those yarrow plants were, they just almost tasted kind of bland compared to my experience of the yarrow out in the wild. And it's because those ones that are out in the wild are experiencing a lot more stress. So they, in turn, made a lot more medicinal constituents, not for our sake, but for their own. So something interesting to consider if you're choosing to explore more cultivation or wild crafting of medicines, just beginning to like notice the difference in like the taste and smell of these different plants. So back to garlic, another, and quercetin, which is high in garlic. Another thing that the quercetin does is that it inhibits this immune cell called NF-kappa B, which releases it produces cytokines in the body. And cytokines are not fun to have circulating in the body. They can make an illness and an experience incredibly miserable. It's that sort of that experience when, I mean, they've kind of been talking about this. I haven't heard as much, but the cytokine storm is really one of the big risks with getting the COVID-19 viral infection, because the body is just going haywire and producing so many different, releasing a lot of different cytokines in the body, and those contribute to things like aches and chills and just that feeling like you're dying and in an immense amount of pain in that feverish state. So things like quercetin can really help lower that response to cytokine production. And one other interesting thing as far as utilizing the medicine is that any quercetin containing plants will hold on to that quercetin if they're not fried or boiled for long periods of time, because it begins to denature over time. But yeah, back to the garlic. One of the fun things that I always think about, I think that was like my most like memorable thing when we learned about garlic in school, was that you know, there's potent antimicrobial properties for garlic. Antibacterial, antiviral, antiparasitic, I was reading, there's a lot of research on how it's anti-parasitic to different kinds of worms, as well as giardia and amoebas, gram-positive and gram-negative bacterias. It has antibacterial activity against H. pylori, which is a bacteria that can get itself established and reside in the stomach. But this antimicrobial property is strongest only after the garlic has been cut or damaged, and allows this chemical pathway to happen that releases those garlic fumes. you want to do an experiment of this next time, you smell a clove right when you unpeel it. Yeah, you can smell the garlic. It's not super potent or strong, but it's there. But as soon as you cut into it, or for the brave of us, bite into it, all of a sudden, it like increases like tenfold. It's so much stronger. And that is one way we can really tell if the medicine is there, by using our senses. And in this case, our smell. It releases this enzyme that helps activate those antimicrobial properties. It's also great for blood support. I put it in the category of blood support just because all of the actions overall are helping to modulate and create a healthy blood composition as well as circulation. So some of the actions of garlic include being an anticoagulant, because so that helps the blood not clot or be as thick and sticky, right? Because that it's not going to flow through our vessels as well as a nice fluid blood that is not so coagulated. Antiplatelet activity for those who have coagulation or thicker, stickier blood. And this isn't, that's an important one to consider if anyone's taking blood thinning medications like warfarin. That is a drug herb interaction that you want to respect and tend to. It also helps lower different kinds of cholesterols, especially triglycerides in the blood. And increases other types of cholesterols that are good for us, like the HDL cholesterol. And again, you know, lipid panels are commonly ordered for people to assess risk factors of cardiovascular disease. And the higher the lipids, the more concerning practitioners get of increased cardiovascular risk. So just even taking garlic on a daily basis, by taking garlic, I mean eating it, can really just help tonify your blood. It also helps lower sugar in the blood, which is, you know, important in scenarios where there is maybe, for one, chronic stress or type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance. If one is sensitive to just having hypoglycemic events in general, I would just pay attention to, like, if there's a relationship to if eating garlic perpetuates that or not. It's not super strong, not like other plants. One that's very lowering of sugar in the blood is cinnamon, actually, which is one that I will, you know, educate my patients about if they are experiencing significant blood sugar drops throughout the day. Other great benefits of the garlic is that it's good for the liver. It's liver protective, and the liver does so many amazing things. The more love we can give our liver, the better off we are. It also helps to modulate the immune system. So again, modulating or an adaptogen means bringing it down if it's too high, lifting it up if it's too low. Any questions here? Okay. Just taking a look at my notes to see if there's any other important things that I wanted to bring to light for you guys about garlic. There's so much about it. I think that's it. Any other greater questions at large? Okay, well, I'm noticing that there are 3 minutes left, so I'm not sure I want to even like get into talking about nettle any further. However, if we do come across it on an herb walk in the future, hopefully those start again soon, I will definitely take time to introduce it and talk about it a little bit more. Hopefully we'll be doing these walks in person again soon. But in the meantime, these are available for you and your friends and family and community online, recorded. 21 Acres has posted 2 of them already, and they will be posting this one as well. And I just wanted to remind you guys all that I am up in Bellingham, but also wanted to remind you that I do have an office that I work at fairly regularly in the North Seattle area. And I am still accepting patients right now. It's a combination of video and in-person visits. It's an interesting transition time right now with orders of how to return back to life and come safely out of quarantine. And I will be teaching and leading these walks once a month, first Saturday of every month until October of this year. I'm also going to be doing some more online classes with greater topics and themes, not necessarily just all herbal medicine, plant medicine related, though I love bringing that in. It's definitely one of my biggest passions. So if you're interested in hearing more about that stuff or just further activities and events, feel free to shoot me an email and I can get you on an email list. If you have any questions or interested in establishing care with a naturopathic doctor, shoot me an email. We can set up a free consultation and chat and see if it would be a good fit. Otherwise, I am so grateful that all of you guys showed up today. It's just been like so humbling and such a pleasure to see all the attendees for these walks. I hope that I'm able to provide some hope and what's the word? I think realization of an invitation of focusing on priorities in our lives right now. This has been such a big time and an opportunity for, you know, internal introspection and reflection, and returning back to what's truly important to us. So I hope that there's maybe some little piece in here that I was able to talk about and bring up that maybe is a reminder for your truth for yourself. And again, honor your mothers, your natal mother, all your other special mothers, Mother Earth, and especially honor yourself as a mother to yourself. Thank you.